Welcome to Mariculture Minute, a podcast about seaweed, shellfish, and salmon in Alaska. I'm Jeremiah Murphy, and today we're continuing to Kelp the Vote.
That's a favorite memory, going out working the set net with my son James and cleaning the bull kelp off of it, which is not a fun job at all, but I like injuring my hands doing it, but feeling happy about the injury in a way. And even then, looking at how remarkably fast that bull kelp grows back. Like as soon as you cut it off, it's growing back again. And if you can harness that kind of rapid growth, we're in for a bounty.
That's Matt Schultz. Matt, as he prefers to be called, is an Anchorage pastor running to represent Alaska in Congress. The current incumbent, who is also running, is Nick Begich, a Republican. Matt, who we'll hear from today, is a Democrat. There's another Democrat and 2 independents also running, for a total of 5 candidates to represent Alaska in the U.S. House of Representatives. That's a total of 5 as of this recording. These numbers tend to switch a lot these days, but it's 5 right now. The party affiliation doesn't really affect the Alaska primary too much. Our primary is in August, and in that primary, Alaska voters will pick their favorite, and the top 4 candidates from that election will move on to the general election. Top 4 move on from the primary to the general election in November, regardless of their party. So it could be 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, 3 Whigs and 1 Federalist, 2 Greens and 2... Add your own political party into the... You understand what I'm talking about. So, I'm going to add a link to Matt's campaign website and another interview about his campaign to give a little more backstory in the show notes. In this episode, we'll hear Matt talk about the importance of mariculture as a means of building Alaska's workforce and keeping workers in the state, how he'd like to help ocean farmers with more infrastructure for cold storage, processing, and transportation, and we'll also give him a little bit of a hard time since he's never shucked an oyster. Maybe a listener out there would like to help him out with that. Which makes me kind of want to see all the candidates shuck oysters. Could that be part of the debates? Let's make politics delicious for once. Which brings me to my disclaimer. Mariculture Minute does not endorse any candidate. I just want to report what they say about seaweed, shellfish, and salmon in Alaska. So, now that that's all out of the way, here's my talk with Matt. I might jump in with some context, and we'll definitely be back in the end to wrap things up. Here we go. So, I'm just curious, what are your general thoughts? What do you think of seaweed and shellfish in Alaska?
I think it's an absolutely brilliant way for us to create in Alaska where all people have a chance to thrive, because we want to make sure everybody has these opportunities to make a good living and do so in a way that is sustainable and economically long-term thinking. You know, this can go into the future forever as a way for us to be creating jobs for people. It's really just smart economic growth that can be a great inroad for lots of young folks growing up in the state to have this opportunity to stay here and do work that really matters in a way that helps their community and builds a long-standing future for them.
Yeah, it's awesome. Do you think there's anything about Alaska in particular that makes it a good spot for seaweed farming or shellfish production?
Well, I wouldn't say I know a whole lot about how it functions other places, but I do feel like the everything in Alaska is bigger and faster and stronger and better, and the rate at which this resource can replenish itself is just remarkable. And what an amazing resource to be working with, and not just a one and done, but a resource that continues to give day after day after day.
If you're elected, how would you help seaweed farmers and shellfish farmers in Alaska?
Boy, I love the way you phrase it. How would I help? Because that really is why I'm running. Is I really just so deeply want to be of service to people and help Alaskans succeed at the things they love and care about. And that's just a great opportunity to get to build that future for Alaskans and with Alaskans so they can make a living here. in Congress, would want to fight for the infrastructure that y'all need to do this work. That can be things like ports and working waterfronts and cold storage, making sure the processing capacity is really vibrant and robust. We, of course, in Alaska, transportation is always a really important puzzle to unlock. Just so, want to make sure there's research opportunities and partnerships available. So many different things. I mean, I'd probably accomplish all that with perfection on day one, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a yeah.
Along with all that, though, one thing that I really want to be looking at a lot as a personal passion is to really be investing in workforce development, helping to create really good jobs here, and to do that with this industry, to tie into this kind of work that we're talking about here, is just a great opportunity again for young people either to grow up and stay here, or to entice outside workers to come in, not just seasonally and then leave again, although I understand that's how some folks are going to function. But I love the thought of reversing the out migration trend in Alaska, to say, look, come for the summer like so many people do, and then stay forever, because this is a home. You can work your whole career here and retire here because you can just thrive as a human.
In your response, I heard the words cold storage and processing and transportation. These are three issues that are big for seaweed farmers, especially processing, because we're still trying to figure out different ways to process seaweed. I was just wondering, do you have any more words about those three topics: cold storage, processing, and transportation to remote areas?
Well, transportation at the moment, I feel like the big bugaboo is going to be the cost of fuel. And so this current administration has in many ways placed that out of reach for a lot of businesses. Businesses that may have been really functioning pretty well a couple of years ago are now saying, can't do it anymore, because just to get my goods to the market, it has this extra layer of costs. And I would say the tariffs have also done a lot on that as well. If we're looking to build something like a port, we're going to need to buy a lot of steel or process or import all these things that we need. And so the tariffs that are on these commodities and goods have just sucker punched so many different businesses. So I think to get a lot of that going, we want to, unfortunately, I would have to start doing a lot on day one with first aid to the economy to repair the harm that's been done in the last year.
When you're talking about importing materials, I was just at a Mariculture conference, and there was an engineer who gave this presentation on actually using seaweed as a building material, as a concrete, and even incorporating, like oyster shells as part of it.
Yeah.
And,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm just excited because I read something about this like a couple of months ago, and I'm by no means an expert on it, but it sounded fascinating.
Yeah, just this whole idea, of making Alaska self-sufficient and finding materials, like you were talking about importing steel. Like we can't make our own steel, but like just finding ways for Alaska to do this stuff kind of homegrown is a interesting kind of tangent to mariculture.
Yeah, agreed. It's each region has its own wisdom, and how are we going to function within this environment that we are the recipients of that bounty and the proud stewards of it for this moment. How can we do right by this environment? And usually what that means is finding a way to live in harmony with it, rather than trying to import what they did in Chicago and do that here. Right. It just doesn't make sense. How can we learn from this environment to function within it?
I was wondering, do you have any favorite seaweed or shellfish dishes?
I did have some of the great barnacle. Am I allowed to drop a company name?
Yes, no rules here.
The salsa, and so the salsa, I'm a little bit addicted to chips and salsa, but that salsa is so good. And then a bunch of the hot sauce as well. I have to admit, I don't have the best tolerance for the heat with hot sauce, so I had to. But my son James goes crazy for the hottest stuff. So he had we were on opposite ends of the range there. But yeah, that's really good stuff. Tasty.
Cool. Have you tried any shellfish, any clams or mussels or oysters?
Oh yes, all of it. I mean,
Okay.
That's one of my favorites. And I feel like I'm not so good at cooking it myself yet. So when I'm lucky enough to go to a restaurant, that's where you really know it's the good stuff. I'm trying, but I I think I overcook it because I get afraid. Like, what if I undercook it? That's really bad. But yeah, I could eat that every meal.
Have you ever tried it raw? Have you ever tried it uncooked or freshly shucked?
I know I should, but I haven't. It's just
You haven't shucked an oyster yet, I take it.
no, I haven't. Nope.
All right. Well, it's a
But
fun skill.
I am game for anything, and I would eat the raw stuff, no doubt. If I think a lot of it has to do with who you're with, and if you trust the people you're with. But if I'm with a bunch of for example, my college buddies, they're always trying to mess with me. They would give me a bad guidance. But if I'm with you, I'll eat all the stuff.
Okay, I appreciate your faith in me. Yeah, that's. I was just wondering, do you have any experience on the water? Being in a boat or anything like that? If you'd like to talk about that.
Absolutely love it. Whenever I get the chance, I would love to be out in a kayak or on a boat of any kind. Some of my earliest joys of raising my kids in Alaska are with a friend of the family named Joe, who take us out on his little boat, and we'd do some fishing out there. And he really taught our kids how to fish. And in particular, when my kids were like, I don't know, like 5 or 10, somewhere in there, he would say to them, if you can find 20 or 25, I forget the number, some large amount of different types of wildlife on this trip, because Joe is a retired science teacher.
Cool.
So he was like, you got to be out there looking for all the different genus and species of these things out here. And so they would learn to differentiate between different types of, seagulls that they would just think they're all gulls. And you go, no, you have to know the individual names for them. And so they would learn all the different types of fish that they're pulling out. And so from a science perspective, it was great. They were bribed with ice cream. If they saw 25, they would get the big treat. But what that also did was unlocked this wonder for us, so that now they love going out and they love seeing it, to the extent that my son James has done a few summers as a set net salmon fisherman and has fallen in love with that life. And I got to help him do that. That's a favorite memory, going out working the set net with my son James and cleaning the bull kelp off of it, which was not a fun job at all. But I like injuring my hands doing it, but feeling happy about the injury in a way. And even then, long before I was running, but looking at how remarkably fast that bull kelp grows back. Like as soon as you cut it off, it's growing back again. Yeah. And if you can harness that kind of rapid growth, then we're in for a bounty.
Going back to shellfish, paralytic shellfish toxin. I don't know if are you familiar with this?
On a surface level, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, algae in the water creates this toxin. It gets in any shellfish, oysters, clams, mussels, and if humans ingest it, it can shut down their muscles and stop people from breathing. So it's deadly. I was just wondering, if you were elected, would you help, or what are your ideas of like helping maintain like a coastal monitoring program for Alaska to monitor for PSP toxins?
There's 2 reasons that's good. One is it's just compassionate, right? We're going to help people not to find themselves made terribly sick or harmed by this. And number 2, it's a great opportunity to invest in science. This current administration just has this terrible record of being anti-science and taking away things that are similar to that, like weather monitoring stations that have become less funded under this administration for no reason other than they wanted to bump up a number on their books to show that they've made cuts, without taking a moment to consider the human cost of what would happen if we are not scientifically equipped and prepared to prevent that kind of harm. So to get a monitoring system up for the toxic, I'm sorry about
it's okay. It's paralytic shellfish toxin.
Thank you.
People abbreviate PST.
PST. So to have proper scientific monitoring on that is absolutely essential. And with most of these scientific endeavors, we have the goal, which we will accomplish, to make sure people have that proper information. But it also then discovers 5 other new practical applications at the same time. So I would absolutely support strengthening that kind of system.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate your talking to me. I was viewing your campaign materials and I saw that salmon came up, and I do cover salmon a little bit. I was just wondering, do you have any thoughts on Alaskan salmon you'd like to share?
Oh, well, gosh, who does not love Alaskan salmon? We could go on and on. And that I am very good at cooking, I'm proud to say.
Okay, yeah. What's your favorite time? What's your favorite salmon?
Well, it depends on the mood I'm in. This time of year, I am always looking to grill because I'm done with winter snow and slush. So I've already grilled a couple times this season. I like to go real easy going with it, just lemon and pepper and very little else. However, in the wintertime, if I'm pulling stuff out of the freezer, I make my own glaze with honey, garlic, soy sauce, and ginger. And I just kind of approximate. I don't really have a recipe. I just decide what looks good. Put that over some real simple rice, broccoli on the side. I don't really eat the broccoli, but I make it so I feel like I'm going to be healthy. From that's just for me in my spare time. From a congressional point of view, we need to be protecting our salmon. It is not only a resource in Alaska, it's arguably the most important resource in all of Alaska. So we need to make sure we are properly managing the runs in a way that preserves people's ways of life. Thinking particularly, of course, about people who are subsistence fishing. We need to make sure that they still have the opportunity to engage in that tradition. And then all the other types of fishing in our state, each of them being important and valuable in their own way. We just need to make sure that people have a voice in that conversation so that the decisions aren't always going to be made by outside corporations, but rather by your friends and neighbors and people who are trying to live a healthy Alaskan life here.
So one just last question that popped into my head. So for a voter out there who's interested in, helping salmon populations at a healthy level, for a voter out there who's interested in, promoting seaweed as something that could help fight climate change as well as give Alaska an economic boost, for the voter who just wants to go out and start a shellfish farm just as a small business. I was just wondering, do you have any general advice for these kinds of voters on how to be more politically active?
Wow, what a great question. Yeah, and I might aim that more toward younger voters because they're the ones that not only sometimes need a bit of encouragement to jump in, but also the decisions we're talking about are long term. Anything that has to do with being environmentally sound in the long run or caring for things like a salmon run, that we're talking generations worth of payback. The young folks are really going to be in there. So how to encourage them to get involved? What should they do? I would say one thing that I tell young people is start with one thing. Find the thing you care about passionately and jump in on that. For a lot of them up here, it is salmon. For a lot of them, it might be voting rights. Everyone has their own thing, but for a lot of people, it's salmon. So really dig deep on that, get invested on that one thing and go at it with focus. Over time, that naturally extends its tendrils out into lots of other issues. You can't talk about salmon without also talking about the business and economy of it, and the climate change aspect of it, and all the tourism aspect of it. So you'll start to naturally become really interested and well informed in all these other things. So start with something and focus on that. Within salmon in particular, I would say make sure that you're trusting, that you're finding trustworthy science. I think one of the terrible divides in our country right now is that people pick their opinion and then try to find the science that agrees with them. It should go the other way. Start with the science. What does the science tell us? Then we form our strategies based on that actual fact. So that, and then the last one, find a trustworthy mentor. There are elders in our state who have lived with these salmon runs for 75 years now, and they're still out there fishing every single summer. And as much as I love a good science book, if you sit down with your elders and hear their stories and hear that more ancient wisdom coming from their lived experience, it's a whole different flavor. And they might not agree with you, you might not agree with them, but you're going to gain wisdom no matter what if you take that time and sit and listen to your elders.
My final question, are you planning on visiting Southeast Alaska anytime during your campaign?
Absolutely, yes. It's just a question now of finding the right squares in the calendar that make the most sense to make us swing through as many different places as we can, and perhaps finding one or two fun events to hook while we're in the neighborhood. So if you're having a big party, let me know. I will jump in on that and do my best to be a part of it. I love getting down there whenever I can. I was already down there in Juneau once, and I'm going to be down there again in a couple of weeks. And I've, in my life, traveled to lots of different places in Southeast, and I just can't wait to get back. One of my favorite things in the world to do is to ride on the ferry. It's just a beautiful thing. Weirdly, that was kind of part of my honeymoon as well.
Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to add, or we covered a lot?
I'd be real happy to meet you in person. So when we come through, we'll let you know. And if you want to show me the best things to eat, I'll take up on it.
That'd be great. Thank you so much, Matt.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, we reached the end of the show. I always like to highlight any mariculture vocab words we might have learned. Today, I heard Matt mention the term outmigration, as well as cold storage and subsistence. I'll throw those onto the show notes and take a stab at some definitions for you. We also learned a few things about Matt Schultz and his bid to be part of Congress. Congress is kind of a big deal these days. They make the laws, the legislative branch of our country. He talked about the value of an Alaskan workforce, how political causes in Alaska work best and possibly help the most when people are focused on a particular issue, such as salmon health. And we also heard how important science is to Matt, who is currently a pastor. All that discussion makes me want to do a science and religion podcast, because it was just Easter and the kiddos were asking all sorts of science and faith questions. I think they even gave me a bit of a migraine. I have no clue how to answer those little kid religion science questions. I should. My dad was an Episcopal priest, and I have a grad degree in science journalism. Those things together should equip me to talk about science and religion, but I have no clue. And I also heard Matt's advice to ask elders about what they know about their local environment. This is a theme I hear a lot when discussing mariculture. Talk to the people who live where you want to farm. I think it's even part of the permitting process. I'll add a few links in the show notes about the primary in August, the Alaskan primary in August, a couple links about Matt. Matt mentioned how the Trump administration made some cuts to weather monitoring. I found some articles to expand on that. And I'll add his salmon glaze recipe and links to the barnacle hot sauces he mentioned when I asked him what his favorite foods were. Those will all be in the show notes at kelpshow.com. Special thanks to Matt Schultz and his campaign. Special thanks to W for supplying the music. From Sitka, Alaska, I'm Jeremiah Murphy. Thanks for listening to Mariculture Minute. You can find us at all the podcast places. I'm not going to list them this time. It's just too many. It's too many words. You can also find us at kelpshow.com and on Instagram at kelpshow. Enjoy the day.